Good morning. I look pretty crazy. It is like 6 something in the morning though. Anyway, I had an idea, and I'm trying to remember what it was now to make this video. Oh, yeah. So, there's this big thing going on about Dave Chappelle. Like, Netflix basically stood with Dave Chappelle, telling any and all of their woke employees that if they don't like it, they could kick rocks, which is awesome. It's good to see Netflix standing up to the woke crowd. They've got my support. You know, unlike, Disney. This is the thing. You give even an inch to these types of people, and they will take everything from you. Users, abusers. There's a lot of those in the woke community. I'm not saying that they're all like that. I know that there are probably real people in that organization that legitimately care. But there's a fine line between fanaticism and standing up for what you believe in, Um, and depending on the circumstance, or how extreme the circumstance may be, sometimes fanatical devotion is necessary, but that's usually life or death. It's not when someone's making a joke about you, right? So, this is what I don't understand about the LGBTQ community. All other communities before them were completely open season when it came to comedy, jokes. Society has always used comedy and jokes and humor to defuse tense situations, um, you know, whether they be racial or sexual or whatever. Hell, even just simple disagreements. Humor can make someone who is completely unappealing, unpopular, the most popular guy in the room. As I said, it can also turn an enemy into a friend. It can turn a friend into an enemy, though, if you don't like the joke. It's a very powerful thing, humor. And really, what I think is that in the past few years, the LGBTQ community has kind of latched on to the political left and made it, and they've done a lot of these extreme movements into positions of power. And in doing so, they have made themselves exempt from all the rules. You can't make jokes about us. I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, the gay community has had jokes made about them for 40, 50 years, okay? The feminist movement has had jokes made about it as well, okay? You have to understand humor, you can't just say something's off limits to humor. Humor is one of humanity's best qualities. And when you start telling people that they can't use that quality, then you've reached a point of fanaticism that borders on tyranny. You can't take humor away. All right? First of all, you can't take free speech away, but humor is very much a part of free speech. Without humor, you just deaden a very influential and bright and wonderful part of the human soul. And so I just think it's kind of funny that the LGBTQ community just can't take jokes. That all of a sudden humor has become this terrible thing, People like Dave Chappelle are being ostracized by a certain community because apparently he is oppressive to them, which is silly. Dave Chappelle has never oppressed a single person of the LGBTQ community. Come on, let's get real. What has he actually ever done to oppress you? Okay? I mean, just because you don't like what he says, because you don't agree with what he says, doesn't make it wrong, doesn't mean he doesn't have the right to say it, and doesn't mean that anybody else does either. I mean, humor and free speech is indicative to American life and the life that we've all come to know. Those social media apps that you love to death only exist because we live in a society where free speech is guaranteed, which is kind of funny because on these supposed social apps now, we are curtailing free speech to such an extent that it's definitely ironic. But I'm not gonna make this a long rant. I just kind of had this idea, because I remember a time when, one of the lines that, there's throughout history, there's been a great many things that people have become offended with. A great many things that we're just like, that's wrong, you know. And humor has never been one of those things. And in periods of time where you have seen humor become outlawed, where you have seen, well, at least humor you don't agree with. That's the thing. Rules for thee, but not for me. Like, if you don't like Dave Chappelle's humor, don't go see his shows. Don't watch his programs. That's all you have to do. Turn them off. But there are millions upon millions of people out there, myself being one such person, who adore Dave Chappelle, who grew up with this guy as a comedy, as like a comedian, who, for me, Dave Chappelle helped me understand race, helped me understand the intricacies of humanity through his humor. When I was just but a young man, we're talking late teens, fresh out on my own, Dave Chappelle was there for me. The Chappelle Show, I saw that show when it was like on TV live. I watched them, all of them, living in my little apartment in Dallas with one of my old friends, Rob. And I'll be damned, like, if that show wasn't one of the single best and most hilarious pieces of media ever put, into the ether, So you have to understand, like, the LGBTQ community and how it operates now is fairly new. This extreme approach to everything is fairly new. They weren't always like that. There was a time when, I feel like their goals were righteous and thoughtful. I don't see that so much nowadays in a lot of the stuff they're doing. And as I said, I'm making broad statements here. I'm sure it's not the entire movement. But what I see in the media, what I see on the internet, what I see in my communities, I see a lot of extreme methods being used in enforcing personal ideology, and that gets dangerous. Despite how righteous or well-to-do you think it is or it feels, extremism and going to extreme measures for anything is dangerous. And, the moment it becomes, like, not socially acceptable to tell jokes about any subject is the moment, just that much more of what makes humanity a beautiful thing dies and becomes this kind of oppressive, totalitarian, nationalistic thing, No ideas should be concrete in the sense that they are worth oppressing someone else over. Even if you were technically oppressed, turning around and oppressing those who oppressed you, is that going to make it better? Or is that just going to create the exact same situation? Is that going to perpetuate the same evils? There was a time in our country, And it wasn't that long ago where a comedian could say just about anything. You know? I mean, look at Andrew Dice Clay, for Christ's sake. I mean, that guy made a career out of saying inappropriate things, and he got pretty far into it before he crossed the line, you know? And even then, I don't think it was because he crossed the line. I think it was just because social standards changed. And all of a sudden, his form of comedy wasn't funny. It was lewd and vulgar and you know, kind of old, you know? It wasn't fresh anymore, you know? And that happens. But that doesn't mean that his comedy should be banned and never played, you know? There is a time and place for it all. And that is something that I think we need to learn too. Forgetting, tearing down, censoring, canceling, whatever you want to call it, things that you don't like, those things, the lessons that those things taught us, those reminders, they need to stay there. Those statues that people like to tear down of historical figures, you know, those things were put in place for reasons, whether you understand them or not. You know, I mean, I think when it comes to changing people's minds, you don't do it by demanding they change their minds. You do it by empathizing with why they have those beliefs in the first place. You try to connect with them. And once you can connect with them and establish a dialogue, and you can both understand your sides of it, then, only then, can you even possibly think about planting the seeds of change in each other's minds, you know? But we're so steadfast nowadays. We're so staunch. We're so fanatical. We're so dead set on what we think is right. You know, that both sides of the argument are fucking up, you know, and doing extremely unreasonable things, demanding extremely unreasonable things, you know, making things an ideological standpoint rather than, you know, just a difference of opinion, you know. Like the fact that Netflix has to send a memo out in the first place to its employees saying, hey, if you don't like Dave Chappelle, kick rocks. You know? I mean, honestly, if this were 10 years ago even, that kind of behavior, the kind of stuff that happened at Disney wouldn't have even been tolerated. They would have been flat out fired. You know? Because you didn't do anything but toe the company line, you know, kind of thing. But nowadays, when you have, you know, you'll have companies where you'll literally have these powerful companies split down the middle on the inside because of ideology, you know. I thought the ideology of these big corporations was to make money, you know? Like, and I never thought I'd say it, but God, I wish they would go back to that, right? You know? Like, there was a time when I thought, man, capitalism, you know, it's so unjust and so unfair, but, you know, the older I get, the more I realize capitalism is what built the world that we live in, for better or worse. Sickness and in health till death do us part, right? This is the world we live in. You know, this is the world that I, you know, that my children will grow up in. You know, do I want to leave them one that's like a chaotic mess, or do I want them to grow up in the kind of society I grew up in, one that was stable, healthy, happy? You know, and I know not everyone's families were like that, and I know that I was very lucky having the kind of stability that I had. You know, that my parents were able to give me the things that allowed me to have a healthy, relatively healthy childhood, you know. It wasn't perfect, but I wasn't starving. I didn't lack the good things in life that were necessities, you know. And I like to say that my kids also enjoy that kind of life, you know, but what about their kids? you know? A world of fanaticism, a world where humor isn't acceptable, is a dangerous one. And we can go from living in this wonderful kind of world we live in now that's not perfect, mind you, but good enough. And we're right on the fucking precipice. I mean, we're running out of basic amenities here in America. And I know other countries have been going through this kind of stuff for a lot longer. I mean, I know there are Middle Eastern and Asian countries that have been going through this stuff for 20, 30 years. This is nothing new to them, you know. But for us Americans, it's very new. Having to worrying about getting baby formula, thinking about buying it on the black market like making a drug deal, that's a reality now. That's real shit. There are fathers and mothers out there right now here in America buying baby formula out of the back of a car for outrageous prices because they can't feed their kid. And we're worried. Like, the world is vastly different from when I grew up, and the kind of politics that are making it possible for this kind of fanatical, unhealthy, extreme ideology to spread and become popular is the same kind of politics that is causing this deterioration in our country's way of life. And it's all connected. It's not one little thing. It's not like, the issue with people being, not liking Dave Chappelle's humor is connected to this extreme far left political ideology, where it's not okay to laugh at people's jokes, but it's okay to be told that I need to get a vaccine, but it's not okay to be told that you can't have an abortion, but it's okay for them to, basically start a ministry of truth. It's a mess. It's a big ass mess out there, and that's what we're living in. We're living in a mess right now, a mess that none of us have ever had to see or live through. Like, this is crazy for everybody, and it's all connected, and that's the crazy part. Where do you start? Where do you differentiate? And I think it starts with saying to your employees, hey, if you don't like the fact that we are employing a comedian to tell jokes, then go kick rocks. I think it has to start somewhere, right? There has to be somewhere where people can start towing the line back to normalcy, back to a place where we can get our bearings, Even if it means going backwards just a little bit. And I don't mean like as in social freedoms. I don't mean as in like the type of progress we make, because honestly, we are going backwards in a lot of ways, and calling it progressivism, I'm sorry. I really don't understand how people think critical race theory isn't racist. It's racism. It's literally like an encyclopedia of racism. Critical race theory encourages racism. And I'm sorry, I'll go off on that at a different time, but still, like, we are going backwards instead of forwards in the ways where in the ways we shouldn't, And I am personally really happy to read the news that Netflix basically told its woke / LGBTQ employees that if they didn't like the fact, as I said, that they are hiring a comedian to tell jokes on their platform, then they can kick rocks. No one's forcing them to watch Dave Chappelle. No one's forcing them to do any of the things they're doing. No one's forcing them to degender children. No one's forcing them to picket outside of literally a entertainment company like they're campaigning for civil rights, okay? Which you're not. There's a difference, okay? There's a difference between what you're doing and what Martin Luther King and his movement was doing. You know, you guys have all the rights you need, and it's not enough. You know, you want more. It's never good enough. There's a difference between what's right and what you want. But anyway, I've rambled on a little bit longer than I would have liked. This is going to be a short one, like I always say, and it ends up being like exactly around 20 minutes. I think like my thought process can only go about 20 minutes before I get distracted. I'm pretty sure it's the ADD that I've had all my life that I don't believe I have that does it. But anyway, I just, I was going through stuff, and just, I was going through my Facebook feed and going through all this stuff and just seeing just how crazy and radicalized everyone is nowadays, and just thinking, like, how did we get so far gone? Like, even my own friends, people that like a couple of years ago had my back, think I've lost my mind because I put a few like politically motivated memes up on my Facebook page. Like, what has come? What have we come to today that we can't just talk to each other? Why do our beliefs have to make so big a difference in the people that we can be around? Just because we might be opposites doesn't mean we can't get along. Just because we might have different beliefs don't mean that we can't enjoy each other's company. And just because you believe to the core that you're right about something and that I'm wrong doesn't mean that we can't establish a dialogue or hang out or have things in common. We all like to eat. We all like to love. We all like to play video games, at least most of us. And you people who say you don't, you're lying to yourselves, or you've never tried it, because it's a lot of fun. We all like to shit. We all like, we all like to, pet our, pet our pets and love our loved ones and give ourselves to people who will accept us. We're all pretty similar in our beliefs when it comes to how we want to be treated, right? We all want to be treated with respect and dignity, right? Right? Well, you got to show that respect and show that dignity to other people, which means if they're doing something you don't like, you can't just denounce them. You have to understand that that's their beliefs, and they have every right to believe them in this country. Anyway, have a great day, everyone. And I guess it's Monday, huh? Happy Monday! Beginning of the week. All right. Anyway, I know for most people this is a really shitty day, but this is like the beginning of my weekend, so I'm chilling. Y'all have a great day out there. Take care. Be safe. MGTOW forever. And remember, don't let these people knock you off of your path. Stay on your path. Focus on what's best for you. And don't let someone else convince you that's what's best for them is what's best for you. Peace out.